When a charity event for veterans turns into a showdown with my HOA's queen of control, will laughter drown out her rules, or has our celebration just declared war? As Karen launched into her litany of grievances, a half-hearted performance of woe about how the joyous sounds of laughter were disturbing her peace, something inside me snapped, like a rubber band stretched too far. It wasn't just the glare she threw at my party guests or the squinting judgment from her piercing blue eyes. It was the sheer audacity of a woman using her energy to quash a celebration that aimed to help veterans. I halted mid-pour, my pitcher of lemonade suspended in the air, and offered her my brightest smile. "Oh, Karen, we're having this charity event to help veterans, guys who put their lives on the line for our freedoms. Can you believe it?" I could feel the smirk forming despite the faux politeness dripping from her frown like a leaky faucet. Her response, predictably, was a firm nod as she calculated the best angle for her complaint to the police. Only in her world could altruism be seen as an act of war. The minute the police sirens broke through the joyous soundtrack of splashing and laughter, I felt my heart drop, only to bounce back like a rubber ball hitting pavement. This was it. Karen had called in the cavalry. My loyal co-host Lucas, with his casual shorts and affable demeanor, stepped up to handle the situation like the community hero he was. As two officers approached, I watched sip nervously for my lemonade, half expecting one of them to issue a ticket for excessive fun. But Lucas, with his signature warmth, rolled up with a beaming smile and the charm of a golden retriever. "Hey there! We're just raising some money for veterans. Care for a cold drink?" There was something surreal about watching my horde of rowdy friends, joyously ignorant of the impending doom, continue to cannonball into the pool while Lucas bridged the gap between celebration and squinty law enforcement. To the surprise of everyone present, including the two officers, the vibe shifted from confrontation to camaraderie, faster than a kid jumping into a pool. In what felt like mere moments, the officers began exercising their own right to join the fun. The first officer took off his cap and, without missing a beat, dove into the pool, causing a tidal wave and raucous laughter from the spectators. The other officer, meanwhile, struck up in jovial conversation with Lucas as he poured drinks, sporting a grin that would have sent Karen into a tizzy. I sidled up to Lucas, lost in the absurdity of the whole situation. "Did you just charm them into partying?" I asked, incredulous. He winked. "Oh, I know how to make friends, especially when there's lemonade and a good cause." Amidst splashes and haphazardly organized laughter, the tide of the afternoon began to shift, and I could practically hear the gears turning in Karen's head from across the street. Her expression morphed from a scowl to pure disbelief as she peered through her expensive binoculars, like a birdwatcher witnessing a unicorn descending from the clouds. It dawned on me. This was my moment to reclaim my backyard and liberate it from her HOA shackle. While she fiddled with her phone, determining the best angle for Facebook outrage, I sunk deeper into the spirit of rebellion by quietly adding an invitation. "Hey, since we're pulling out all the stops, why don't we invite the full police department to the after-party?" Though it was a decidedly petty thought at first, the idea quickly snowballed into action, because why not? I pulled out my phone, typing out an invite and shooting it off to every officer I could find. The neighborhood had grown very familiar with my parties over the years, and they'd undoubtedly appreciate a second chance to unwind amidst the shenanigans of HOA warriors rallying against the common joy of good old-fashioned merriment. A few moments later, the guests received the news with bellows of excitement, reveling at the potential of the nighttime after-party. Karen's fate was already sealed. If she thought she could spoil my efforts, I might just ruin her quiet evening in the process. Now, as the sun began to slide down the sky, casting a golden hue over the riotous scene, I stabilized my nerves, stifling an involuntary laugh at the thought of cooking her weekend. The officers that had initially arrived to police a ruckus turned into the very life of my party, exchanging woes over lukewarm coffee for a splash of life and laughter under string lights. Meanwhile, my vibrant guests threw out dance moves as casually as candy wrappers on the pavement, transforming the atmosphere into a joyful uproar. "You won't believe the shindig next door!" yelled one of the officers into his unapologetically clunky radio back to the station. By the time night fell, with festive fusions of laughter swirling around like the delicious aroma of barbecued ribs, I could feel satisfaction spark in my chest. Instead of being grumpy under Karen's watch, I was now the queen of celebration, heralded by happy officers and loyal friends. A victory dance was clearly needed, and as I linked arms with Lucas, dancing and laughing under twinkling lights bathed in twilight, I couldn't help but glance over at Karen, who now stood at the edge of her driveway, her carefully curated life visibly unraveling one noise complaint at a time. Did she think she could outlast fun? What would she do next in her crusade to reign supreme? I'm sure she's already scripting her next complaint. As the evening descended like confetti tossed into the air, the atmosphere was transformed into a harmonious festival of friends, laughter, and of course, the glorious sounds of distant sirens. I watched as one enthusiastic officer led an impromptu limbo contest, using an inflatable pool noodle as his makeshift bar. The crowd roared with enthusiasm, with one veteran tossing aside his crutches for the sake of camaraderie, body swaying left to right, exuding an infectious joy. While Karen stood rigid and unyielding across the street, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline to sanity, I couldn't help but revel in the delightful chaos sprawling across my backyard. Perhaps, deep down, she was turning shades of green, her heart slowly wilting like an overwatered plant. In between fits of laughter and high fives, the surprise visit from the police force had forged an unexpected alliance, one that stood in stark contrast to Karen's intentions. Who knew making new friends could be this easy? Lucas cheered, throwing a handful of glittering confetti into the air and showering it over everyone like we were at a carnival instead of my suburban backyard. I nodded my head vigorously. There was no feeling quite like the thrill of turning a potential disaster into an epic party. The carefree attitude of my guests melded beautifully with the officers' jovial spirits, and before I knew it, they were all reminiscing about their own neighborhood get-togethers, recounting stories of past pranks and shared laughs. Sharing in the lightheartedness of it all, Karen clenched her fists tighter, surely brainstorming the latest set of rules to stop such absurdity from ever happening again. The night wore on, and with every noise emanating from my backyard, I could practically feel Karen's tolerance reservoir draining. I glanced over to see her periodically checking her watch, as if she could reverse time and erase the unholy alliance that had formed from the shards of her grievance. But the spirit of rebellion was palpable, rivaling the delicious barbecue wafting through the air. "Let's give Karen a real show," Lucas bellowed with signature bravado, reaching for the portable speaker to introduce an upbeat dance-off challenge. Whoever could shake it the fastest would earn the coveted title of Pool Party MVP. My guests erupted with enthusiasm. It felt strangely empowering to flip the narrative. The last of it flickered in my mind. Karen wouldn't just be a sad observer tonight. No, she would witness a celebration forged from community spirit up close and personal. Can't you just picture it? The hallowed grounds of the HOA representative, a fortress of gloom decorated with her dire, unyielding rules, now witnessing chaos, the kind that unfolds under twinkling fairy lights and a sky full of stars. As laughter echoed over the fence, I noticed one of the officers, a bearded fellow named Officer Jenkins, glancing back at Karen with a mischievous grin. "Get ready for some noise complaints," he quipped, sending everyone into another fit of giggles while I couldn't help but grin ear to ear. It was as if an invisible wall had been knocked down, allowing every ounce of bitterness to swirl away, replaced with joy and the thrill of reclaiming the night. I could practically hear the soundtrack of each splash and cheer melding into a subliminal take that directed toward my very own HOA warrior. Meanwhile, a few adventurous souls began to form a conga line, snaking through the yard as if there were no boundaries to enjoy. I waved at Karen, waving cheerfully as my newfound friends enthusiastically paraded across her pristine viewing territory. "We're raising funds for veterans, Karen," I shouted amid a chorus of giggles, striving for the perfect pitch between joviality and sheer sarcastic delight. Although she shot daggers from her ultra-serious gaze, I could have sworn for a fleeting moment the corner of her mouth twitched, a sign of impending capitulation, or perhaps just a muscle cramp from squinting too hard. Would the infamous Queen of Control finally crack under the festive pressure, or would she simply retreat into the shadows, living to enforce again another day? As the conga line careened into a game of musical chairs, the chaos swirled seamlessly as I moved around the barbecue to check on the food. I was proud to see how supportive my neighbors were, casting aside their differences to join forces in this unexpected battle against Karen's draconian rule. The cops and my friends were now firmly bonded in a dance-like unity of rebellion, each swaying to the rhythm of togetherness. As I witnessed Lucas jumping high for an exaggerated twist, mirroring every child's wild abandon, I felt hope blossom. Perhaps this chaotic celebration was the exact remedy for the strain our community faced. Maybe Karen would think twice before picking up that clipboard again in the future. But the night wouldn't be complete without the pièce de résistance, and just as I planned to unleash the ultimate surprise, I felt an electric buzz run through the air, as if the universe itself was guiding me. A fireworks show had been planned all along, my last secret objective for the night. As I announced to the crowd that we would cap the evening off with a spectacular display, the happiness surged, children squealed, and the locals who had come for a casual BBQ perked up with exhilaration. My eyes darted toward Karen once more. She stood rooted to the ground, eyes wide as saucers, mouth agape in pure disbelief. We were finally going to show her what true community spirit looked like, and for that, I grinned with delightful anticipation as if balancing on the tip of the highest dive. Fireworks, huh? I sure hope they adhere to all local regulations. A voice trailed sarcastically, cutting through the crowd. I couldn't help but laugh, not even needing to turn around to know it was Lucas. The laughter poured from me, infectious and unrestrained, echoing in the summer night air with glee. The finale was nigh, and with the clear sky above, it dawned on me that fun was finally winning the battle against entitlement, uniting a community beneath a sky bursting with color and joy. With sparks preparing to illuminate the night, would I finally show Karen that the life we celebrate together can drown out her law-bound whispers? Would that night rewrite our HOA history in the best plot twist? The anticipation hung thick in the air. Our fates were about to collide in a spectacular bloom of joyous rebellion. As the sun dipped lower behind the rooftops, painting the skies in hues of orange and purple, the stakes of our soiree reached astonishing heights. With reggae beats pulsating through the air and laughter spilling over like the freshly mixed drinks, the atmospheric tension began to fuse with the excitement of impending fireworks. I marveled at how quickly the dynamic shifted. The police officers were no longer just guardians of the law, but honorary party guests who blended seamlessly with the exuberance of the night. Lucas, with the flair of a seasoned event planner, took to the microphone with confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to light up the night?" he shouted, sending waves of cheers ricocheting across our now transformed backyard. I caught a glimpse of Karen across the street, her tight-lipped frown resembling a chipmunk hoarding nuts for winter, clearly unsettled by the party consolidating around her once pristine property line. With a flourish, Lucas whipped out the firework box, a veritable treasure chest hiding explosive bursts of color. He started building the anticipation with humorous banter, feigning exaggerated caution as he read through the safety manual, which in reality was crumpled paper he promptly tossed aside. "Safety? Please. This is a party. We don't have room for that kind of negativity." His nonchalant attitude invigorated everyone, turning the sense of rebellion into a collective spirit soaring higher than one of those fireworks would soon reach. Surprisingly, Karen's glare intensified, her eyes narrowing as she struggled with the throbbing pulse of creativity that was just outside her control. No clipboard could save her from this impending eruption of exuberance. As the first firework shot into the night sky with a sizzle, laughter erupted around us, filling the air like bees surrounding the sweetest of flowers. Dots of light blossomed in vivid colors, painting the darkness with vibrant reds, blues, and greens, graphically illustrating our inescapable unity. The crowd collectively sighed in awe, and even the officers raised their hands, whooping with the zeal of crowds enjoying their favorite sports team. But lost in my euphoric swells of joy, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Karen was about to rain on our firework-fueled parade. With a summer breeze gently tousling my curls, I turned my attention back to the night and channeled my energy toward lighting the beacons of camaraderie, forgetting about that clipboard-clutching menace for the moment. Just as I settled into the rhythm of the celebration, the unmistakable sound of chattering teeth, a sound synonymous with Karen, sliced through the triumphant crackles of the fireworks. This is completely unacceptable, she yelled, stalking down the road toward my backyard like a storm cloud, ready to drench us in its fury. In that moment, I swear even the fireworks paused in the air, quietly bracing for impact. It felt like the universe held its breath, anticipating a showdown that was inevitable. Fireworks aren't allowed. You pooled all these people together without any HOA permits. You are breaking the law, she accused, an accusatory finger raised like she was an ancient Roman, pointing out a gladiator's misdeeds in the Colosseum. Amidst her obstinate rant, the officers exchanged glances and chuckled under their breath, clearly painted into the absurdity of the moment, as one of them, believe it or not, Officer Jenkins, challenged her friendlier than I had expected. But Karen, doesn't it look like everyone is having fun? This looks like the kind of life we're called to protect. Parties like this bring neighbors together, don't you think? His suggestion was met with a mixture of stunned silence and a collective suppressed snicker from the crowd, proving that even the police force had their own sitcom moment at the expense of our local HOA enforcer. I couldn't help but bask in this delightful turn of events. Who could have wielded the power of a playful dance-off with a sprinkle of fireworks? Emboldened by my surroundings, I stepped forward and shot Karen a cheeky grin. You know, we were lucky to have you as the catalyst to bring us together tonight. Would you care to join us for a celebratory dance? I winked, and several guests exploded into laughter as they began to sway to the music again, momentarily bereft of the seriousness that had been hanging in the air. Karen floundered, her self-righteous indignation dashed against the joy sparking around us. Suddenly aware of how ridiculous her demeanor was, it was almost poetic to watch the cracks in her icy facade begin to form. Would she succumb to the joyous insistence of the crowd or stand resolute in her keen disapproval? Just then, as if the universe had conspired beautifully with my burgeoning hopes, the grand finale of fireworks erupted in a dazzling array of colors, filling the sky with explosive forms that brightened even the darkest corners of the night. Cheers echoed across the neighborhood while Karen remained a mere silhouette against the blazing spectacle above. I seized that moment of brilliance to yell, "Let's get Karen dancing! Who's with me?" In the delightful chaos, a dozen guests rallied towards her, probing for even the slightest crack in her stoic armor. Could we finally coax her into joining our merry band of rebels, if only for a few fleeting moments? It was worth the try, and I sensed the night's collective heartbeat quickening as we herded closer, our shenanigans gaining momentum like a rolling train easing past a station. As the fireworks painted the night sky, and joy attempted to crack open the shell of Karen's stoicism, a question hung palpably in the air. Would she embrace the joy of community, or would she flee back behind her walls, plotting revenge softly in the shadows? I leaned closer, eager for a resolution, and prepared to seize the moment. With the firework finale illuminating the spine of the night, I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all, the perfect chaotic riot surrounding the authoritarian queen of our community. My guests were practically sweeping Karen off her feet with laughter, foisting glow sticks and silly hats onto her, bathing her in the very spirit she had so violently sought to extinguish. "Come on, join the fun! It's not every day you have a chance to dance with the neighborhood troublemaker," I shouted, relying heavily on my most obnoxious party hosting tones. The crowd cheered like we had propped up the best propaganda machine known to mankind, our mission to transform Karen from reigning bitter queen to reluctant partygoer now in full swing. But alas, Karen's resolve didn't falter easily, like trying to squeeze toothpaste back into the tube. She stood her ground, arms crossed, jaws clenching tightly around her indignation, a bulwark of resilience clad in high-waisted slacks. "This isn't right. I will report every last one of you, she began, but her words blended into the rhythm of the music, now more akin to a distant echo than a clear threat. The officers who had been twirling their flashlights like limelight stars snickered at her, probably thinking they'd finally encountered the epitome of entitlement, wrapped in a neat little white bow. One of them, Officer Jenkins, took a few steps closer, a grin stretching across his face. "Karen, I didn't know you could dance. Show us your moves." For a moment, her icy demeanor melted under the heat of community spirit, and I saw her lips twitching, attempting to suppress a smile while ultimately failing under the pressures of the crowd. It suddenly became a comedy show, as everyone mirrored her stuck-up posture and exaggerated glamour, embodying the epitome of how drama unfolds when one refuses to dance. One guest made the bold move to imitate her wild finger waving, each mockery launching another crater into her serious facade. It was the kind of reflection pointed at the heart of absurdity, the juxtaposition of joy clashing so violently with her built-up tension. "For heaven's sake!" she gasped, her voice quaking slightly as laughter erupted anew. I sensed I could feel the thrum of hope nudging at her defenses, as the lights hardly dimmed, dazzling right where it should. Fueled by this rare glimpse of potential surrender, I called upon my reservoir of courage. This was it. In the name of summer spirit and charity, I shoved my way to the front, brandishing an inflatable microphone like a knight wielding a sword. "Ladies and gentlemen, behold, we have a special announcement." The music faded just enough to let a hush settle, albeit a feisty one, as I extended the microphone toward the now frazzled figure of Karen. "Karen Hemsworth, would you like to deliver your famous greeting to the neighborhood?" The laughter washed over her again, and I could swear at that moment every glimmer of authority she held cracked just a tad more. "Ah, you know what?" she exclaimed, and we all leaned in, curiosity piqued as the crowd clung to every tentative word. "I can't believe we've descended into this madness. You folks are out of control, and this is completely—" She paused, her voice wavering. "This is totally unacceptable." Yet even as her words hung in the air, something flickered in her voice, hinting towards reluctant acceptance rather than rejection, a spark desperately vying to ignite. The teamwork of my neighbors working together made me feel unstoppable, our efforts blurring the lines between annoyance and delight. Could we actually persuade her into the fold? What would it take to finally reduce this grand antagonist into a character made for a repertoire of lighthearted tales? With raucous laughter cascading through the yard, I stood resolute, ready to push the pedal to the undeniable hilarity of the moment. Without an ounce of real dignity, I shouted back, "Isn't it time to ditch the clipboard and shake it like we mean it, Karen? We could start a protest against the boredom." The crowd erupted, begging her to break character and join our zany parade of fellowship. A few spontaneous chants in her honor began to rise up, drowning the night in spirited calls like "You can dance!" and join the fun. At this point, it felt like a true circus unfolding, my heart thumping with hope that the epitome of all that was rotten in our community might give in, just for a moment. As the final fireworks fizzled and the talented display of color faded away, the universe seemed to realign in a collective gasp of anticipation. Dare I say a moment concocted purely for the comedy of life? Karen stood there, surrounded by giggling neighbors and self-inflicted glowing decorations. Her stance unsteady as uncertainty, wrestled with an improbable sense of community, bridging her old world of rules with the effervescent joy bubbling just beyond her solemn frown. Would she cast away the shadows of authority and embrace the rebellious warmth of camaraderie? Or would this be the moment when chaos officially dethroned her from the discomfort of her high-waisted reign? I held my breath, awaiting the seemingly inevitable, a moment where lights shifted in kaleidoscopic motions, bringing forth a real character in this unlikely dance-off. Would she acquiesce? The crowd quivered in delicious anticipation. The charged atmosphere crackled with laughter as Karen stood frozen in the middle of the yard, wavering between the realm of societal decorum and the wild, shimmering world of summer fun. One would think she had just been given an invitation to a bizarre circus act. Watching her struggle against the tide of my insistent, goofy ploys felt like watching a cat being handed a bath. furious, and wildly unnerved, but definitely losing the battle to curiosity. Finally, with an exasperated sigh and a twitch of her meticulously coiffed hair, Karen rolled her eyes as if plotting an escape plan but lacked a real exit. My heart raced as she took a hesitant step forward and then another, inching closer to where the pulsing music and laughing neighbors swarmed around like moths to an incandescent flame. "Fine," she exclaimed, her voice somehow both regal and bewildered. "But only for 5 minutes, and do not expect me to enjoy it." The crowd erupted in triumphant cheer, which I nearly likened to the joyous symphony of a reigning monarch's proclamation of peace. At that moment, Karen had proclaimed her reluctant involvement with the solemnity of a king surrendering to a jester. My mind buzzed with electric possibilities. 5 minutes of dancing, I echoed theatrically. "You all heard the lady. Let's make it count." The countdown had begun, and I could practically see the clock ticking down in the air, every second tinged with a hint of rivalry that tasted sweet like cotton candy. This was no ordinary dance-off. This was a summit of petty revenge and community spirit combined. With half the crowd thrusting inflatable microphones and dance props in her direction, I joined the throng as we circled Karen, exuberantly chanting her name like some hip-hop beatboxing crowd, spinning about their favorite artist. Her feet shuffled awkwardly to the side, eyes darting back and forth as she clutched the clipboard like it might escape at any moment. "Oh, come on, just give us a little shimmy," I shouted, emphasizing every syllable. Lucas, still basking in the limelight, added fuel to the fire. "We need to see if the Karen Hemsworth can keep up with the unruly kids. Show us your best moves." In a dire attempt to not go down alone, Karen clenched her clipboard tighter, and for a flickering instant, I thought she might actually banter back. Then, just as the weight of the moment hit her, she surrendered to spontaneity. In a flash, her body leaned tentatively to the side. It wasn't quite a cha-cha, more of a confused hop, but for the first time that evening, I saw laughter shivering behind those fierce blue eyes. The crowd erupted again, and the sheer abandonment of shyness cheered through the universe like a siren call. I couldn't help but break into a fit of giggles, my voice rising with uncontainable joy as I yelled, "Yes, that's the spirit. You're looser than I thought. What will the HOA say about this?" The room shook with mirth as the very walls of uptightness started crumbling under the joyful pressure of too much fun, glimmering like fireworks against the dusk. "Enough of this foolishness," Karen protested, though I could tell it was an act. There was no bite left in her bark, and as she loosened her grip on the clipboard, it almost seemed as though those uptight, high-waisted slacks were trembling with the rhythm of the music. Her frigid exterior continued to thaw, warmth radiating amidst our collective chaos. Perhaps it was the glow of the colorful lights, or maybe just the camaraderie piling around her like a group hug in motion. "How dare you try to show me how to live?" she added with mock consternation, which only invited further chants from the crowd. "Dance, Karen, dance!" That became an anthem unto itself, buoying her forward through an interlude of camaraderie. Finally dropping the clipboard altogether, Karen launched herself into a spin, mirroring the ridiculous antics around her with newfound glee. The crowd gasped collectively, surprised by the frozen statue finally breaking into motion. It was as if she had torn down the wall of compliance she had stood behind for years, allowing herself to experience a hint of freedom amid the cheering brigade that had once felt trepidation at the thought of even worrying her judgmental gaze. She transformed before us from a stiff enforcer into an unwitting performer, twirling like a sprightly ballerina, regrettably cursed by the exuberance of completely unexpected spontaneity. Laughter and astonishment surged through our gathering, and I found myself in a fit of elastic joy. That 5-minute limit looked like it was to become an eternity. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a defining moment of our community," I declared with utmost sincerity and grandeur, as if presiding over an official gala. Who knew Karen Hemsworth could shimmy like that? Next HOA meeting shall be hosted by her at this very spot, with dancing required of all members. The laughter that erupted felt like a cleansing wave, washing away the vestiges of Karen as the neighborhood scolded. As I watched her whirl amidst the jubilant excitement, I couldn't help but wonder how this faint spark of joy might transform not just her, but our community too. Would we finally see less of the clipboard and more of the lemonade? Could this truly redefine the historically tight bonds of our neighborhood? The answer loomed ahead, ripe for picking like sun-ripened peaches waiting in the garden. As the twinkling fairy lights illuminated our backyard, the cacophony of laughter and music merged delightfully into a melody that reverberated through the evening air. Those glorious 5 minutes of Karen's unexpected dance had transformed into a jubilant hour, and she paraded that once aloof humor with each passing song. Her earlier rigidity was a thing of the past. The inflatable flamingo floated nearby, adorned with a festive Hawaiian lei, while neighbors cheered her on as if she was the headliner for the hottest summer concert series. "Do it for the HOA!" Lucas hollered, feigning a tear of pride, and I found myself clutching my sides from laughter at the sheer absurdity of it all. Just a week prior, Karen had been the sworn enemy of our summer revelry, and now she was practically leading the charge into Party Town. The sense of irony wrapped around the scene tightly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were witnessing a small revolution, one that took the form of a house party. Conversations among subdued partygoers crescendoed into shouts of encouragement for our newly appointed party queen. "Look at her spin," one neighbor yelled, and I couldn't help but join the chorus, rallying my fellow residents to embrace this bizarre shift. I threw my hands in the air, emphasizing, "This is not just a carefree bop. This is a movement." The waltz of laughter felt like a balm on the years-long tension crafted under the oppressive watch of our very own community watchdog. As the evening progressed, a growing crowd emanated from the kindness of our pivoting villain turned hero. Her dance moves, half bewildered, half liberating, had turned into a sensational trend on social media. Word had spread like wildfire, drawing curious neighbors and even passers-by who were desperate for a glimpse of the HOA's once powerful enforcer experiencing pure joy. I could already envision the headlines, "Karen Hemsworth, from HOA enforcer to neighborhood sensation." The likes and shares reflected an astonishing turnaround, with some video clips landing squarely into a friend's feed, provoking both disbelief and laughter. The police officers, still mingling from their initial intervention, chuckled heartily along with the crowd, blending the very sense of duty with an unforgettable, surreal scene of community unity. After what felt like a decade of keeping up appearances, the music shifted to a more upbeat tempo, spurring the party into ignition mode. Whoever had been manning the playlist that night was a true magician, spinning tracks that drove the energy higher and higher. As the raucous laughter and exuberant dancing conquered any lingering tension, Lucas surveyed the crowd, eyes sparkling with joy, before cheekily announcing the next twist. "And now, folks, it's time for the ultimate challenge, karaoke. Who's brave enough to take center stage alongside our magnificent Karen?" The mere mention of karaoke sent the audience into fits of laughter and squeals, empowering them to disregard their hesitation and seizing the bardic moment as though they had been gathering a lifetime of untold stories in their throats. As for Karen, the transformation was becoming clear. A gleam of exuberance sparkled in her blue eyes that I had never seen before. She waved at the crowd, beckoning them to join her for a duet. I wondered momentarily if this had been an elaborate plot on her end, merely concocted to humble us and restore order in a neighborhood motley crew. But as she stepped onto the improvised karaoke stage, clipboard long forgotten, I found that inkling squashed into thin air. Karen launched into a surprisingly impressive rendition of "I Will Survive," loudly belting it out while the neighborhood rallied behind her, gleefully joining in the chorus. The disbelief kicked into overdrive as we watched her, almost spectacularly embracing her latent diva, and Lucas led the chants that powered through the crowd, everyone laughing and cheering, remembering that this was not just a party, it was a blend of gallant karma and comedy. By the end of the night, Karen had morphed into an unexpected symbol of humor over entitlement, having captivated our usually somber community and turned it on its head. Standing around the dimly lit fire pit, I glanced around at my neighbors, their faces glowing with laughter and warmth. The evolution of our block had been astounding, emerging from a timid atmosphere into one of shared memories and collective hilarity. All around, folks shook their heads in delighted disbelief, saying that they had never imagined witnessing such a change. And as for me, I knew I needed to capitalize on this newfound unity. I mentally jotted down ideas surging within me like the bubbles of a freshly opened soda, wanting more, not just parties, but real connections. Perhaps this event could inspire a new culture of fun. Who knew, we might even consider an annual bash as homage to this magical night. I turned to Karen as she luxuriated in her newfound fame, and with mischief and genuine gratitude, I wondered aloud, "So, what's the HOA's take on fun like this?" Her laughter echoed in response, a sound that no longer felt strained but alive, hinting at a new chapter in both her life and ours. Maybe all it takes to reshape perceptions is a little dance with hilarity, a lesson learned the hard way from a summer pool party, bold enough to turn an HOA conflict into a ball of comedic triumph. Shall we dare redefine what it means to be a community from this day forward?